Okay, well, it was another bloodbath in Bitcoin today. Yesterday we broke a trend line and moved from 11,000 to 10,000, and now today we've had another measured move lower from 10,000 to 9,000. My indicator actually says that there is a possibility that we could go to 8,000, but after that we would be at some of the most oversold levels we've ever had, and I really can't predict what's going to happen after that. But what I wanted to talk about today is something that I've been seeing in the Bitcoin futures. I actually helped Bitcoin.com put together some charts to show this phenomenon before, but now we've seen it again before this most recent sell. And I think it is something very important that everybody in the cryptocurrency market should be aware of. So before I show it to you on the Bitcoin chart, I just want to give you a thorough description of the indicator that we're talking about here, and it is cumulative delta. So cumulative delta is an indicator that we tend to use in futures markets because we get historical bid and ask data. We can determine if volume is a market buy or a market sell order. So obviously there's always an equal number of buyers and sellers in the market because you can't have a transaction without a buyer and seller, right? But it tends to be the market order that exerts pressure and moves price. That's not always true. Sometimes the limit orders win, but that tends to be more indicative of a range-bound market, right? So here is a chart. This is what I trade every day. This is the 10-year Treasury futures, or ZN. And basically, every time that there's a market buy, cumulative delta goes up by 1. Every time there's a market sell, cumulative delta goes down by 1. So here we can see it tends to follow price, right? Price is going up, cumulative delta is going up. And what I often look for, the way that I tend to use cumulative delta, is I'm looking for some sort of divergence between price and cumulative delta. So for instance, here, we came up and then we had a pullback and then we made a new high in price. But if you look at the cumulative delta, we can see that we didn't make a new high in cumulative delta. So this is an indication that the market buying pressure is not as strong on that move up. And sure enough, what happened after that? It was all downhill. So basically, we're looking for a divergence between price and cumulative delta. So now that I've explained that, let me show it to you in the Bitcoin futures. So this is the area that was featured in the Bitcoin.com article back on the 16th. We can see here late in the day, we had a fairly significant move up, couple $100 move up in price. And the Bitcoin futures overall were actually selling through much of that move up. So, you know, they were actually selling pretty much all day, even though price went up, which is very curious because, again, we've seen usually price and cumulative delta tend to line up fairly equally. And what happened afterwards? Well, we all remember that, right? So that was the first indication that we were really in trouble, okay? So now let's see what happened last night. Well, yesterday, we had this kind of interesting head and shoulders pattern here, and we had another pretty significant move up in price. And this one, it was even more extreme. Look, the cumulative delta went down by about 30, I want to say 20 to 30 orders, maybe even 40, you know, around there. So about the same amount of orders going short, even though price was going up. And then we even saw it again late today. The price chart doesn't show it very well, but we had a pretty ugly head fake in Bitcoin today. And if I just go in here to a 5-minute chart, you can see we made a low and came up, and then they immediately got smacked down. It was pretty ugly head fake there. Although we may be making a higher low, so Fingers crossed, maybe it's over. But what did we see in the futures? When it was moving up, they didn't care. They were still selling it. Especially this little spike up right here. They barely even noticed it. So it's almost like the Bitcoin futures know what is going to happen before it happens. Now, one explanation for this could be that somebody has a position in the Bitcoin Cash and they are planning on selling it. So they go into the Bitcoin futures and they sell the futures because the market orders don't seem to be as influential right now as just the cash futures spot price, because there's just not that much liquidity or volume in the Bitcoin futures right now. So they accumulate a short position of about 30 or however many it is. They accumulate a position in the futures, and then they go and they sell all of their Bitcoins over on the cash, and they make money on the futures as things go down. Now, we can't necessarily prove that alone with this data, but I do think that we have enough information that this is something that the SEC should potentially look at. Because if somebody really is doing that, that could be a form of price manipulation. And since they are doing it with futures, that's illegal. So if that really is what's happening, and whoever it is that's selling this is out there listening, fuck you. Seriously. I can't believe that anybody would be so greedy to try and pull a stunt like that. I personally don't have a whole lot of money in the Bitcoin market. I've always maintained that we were in a bubble and I didn't want to buy until we started to get to the 50 level. And like I've said, I think that we could possibly get to 8,000. This is around the time that I would buy. So I have a little bit of money in the Bitcoin market, but not a whole lot. So I personally am not hurt too much by it. But man, there are a lot of people out there with some money in it. A lot of people that probably put in more money than they should have spent. And there are people out there doing something illegal. So how do we get back at this asshole? Watch this indicator. Because if he tries to do it again, we're all going to know, right? This has happened now 3 times, possibly even more, although those are the 3 most significant times. So I think that this is something that if you're trading Bitcoin, you need to be watching this. Absolutely. If you don't have access to futures data, probably the easiest way to get access to it is through TradingView. So if you pay for TradingView, there's a cumulative delta indicator, and you can look at the CME futures and you can see what's happening. So absolutely, if you're trading, you should look at this. Also, when I stream, I show this chart while I'm streaming, so you can look at it. And you know, if you can't see it, just ask me chat and I'll pull it up. So I hope that this helps people. I hope that this makes markets safer for you. And I hope you have better times ahead of us in the future. Fingers crossed. I wouldn't like to see it down to 8,000, but it could happen. And maybe even beyond that, who knows, that anything is possible. Anyways, so here's to better days in the futures. I will see you tomorrow.